The massive crystal towers of Vexor Prime stretched toward the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the largest tower, beings from across the galaxy gathered in a great hall that could hold 10,000 creatures. The air shimmered with different atmospheres needed by each species. Some breathed oxygen, others methane, and a few needed no air at all. Elder Keeper Zephin floated above the assembly, his body like living mist, with eyes that held the wisdom of eons. His voice echoed in the minds of every creature present, speaking without words. Around him, 47 different species waited in their designated areas. Some had scales, others had fur, and many had forms that defied easy description. Brothers and sisters of the galaxy, Zephin began, his mental voice carrying the weight of centuries, we have discovered a new species. They call themselves humans, and they live on the third planet of a young yellow star. This species is unlike any we have encountered before. War Prime Krextyle of the Draconian Empire shifted his massive reptilian form. His red eyes gleamed with interest. The Draconians ruled over 12 star systems and were known for their military might. They had conquered 17 species in the past 1,000 years. To them, a new species meant either new servants or new enemies to crush. Tell us about these humans, Krextyle demanded, his voice a deep growl that vibrated through the hall. Are they strong? Do they have advanced weapons? How many worlds do they control? Zephin turned his ancient gaze toward the Draconian leader. They control only one world. Their technology is primitive by our standards. They have not yet learned to travel between stars. They fight with metal projectiles and crude explosives. Their population is small, barely 8 billion individuals. A ripple of amusement went through the assembly. The insectoid hive queen. Chalik clicked her mandibles in what passed for laughter among her species. 8 billion on one world? My colonies hold more individuals than that across 50 planets. Why do the keepers concern themselves with such insignificant creatures? But Zephin did not share their amusement. His ethereal form grew darker, more solid, as fear crept into his mental voice. Because I have seen what they become. I have witnessed possible futures, fragments of time that may come to pass. In some of these visions, the galaxy burns, entire civilizations fall, worlds are turned to ash, and at the center of this destruction stand the humans. The hall fell silent. The Keepers were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to glimpse possible futures. Their warnings had saved countless worlds from disaster. When a Keeper spoke of danger, wise beings listened. Possible, Krextyle scoffed. How can such primitive creatures threaten anyone? Our smallest scout ship could destroy their entire planet in minutes. Our weapons can split atoms, bend space, and manipulate time itself. What could they possibly do to us? Zephin's form flickered as painful visions flashed through his mind. They are not like us. When cornered, they do not surrender. When outnumbered, they do not retreat. When facing certain death, they charge forward with weapons in their hands and rage in their hearts. They have a word in their language, spite. It means to act purely out of hatred for one's enemy, even at great cost to oneself. The Keeper paused, letting this concept sink in. Most galactic species were logical. They surrendered when defeat was certain. They negotiated when terms were favorable. They preserved their lives above all else. The idea of fighting purely out of hatred was alien to them. In their short history, Zephin continued, they have fought over 4,000 wars. They have created weapons capable of destroying their own world multiple times over. When faced with extinction, they do not pray to their gods or accept their fate. They build bigger weapons. Ambassador Veltar of the Peaceful Cetacean Federation raised a tentacle. Species had eliminated war from their culture millennia ago. Surely they can be reasoned with. All intelligent species can learn to live. In peace, we could teach them, guide them toward a better path. Zephin turned his gaze toward her, and she recoiled from what she saw in his ancient eyes. I have seen that future as well. A cetacean diplomat approaches a human warship to offer peace. The humans listen politely to the offer, then they ask, one question. What guarantee do we have that you will not betray us later? When the diplomat cannot provide absolute certainty, the humans refuse. They say they would rather die free than live as slaves, even comfortable slaves. War Prime Krextile slammed his clawed fist on his chair. Enough of these fear-mongering visions. Facts are what matter. These humans have no faster-than-light travel. They have no energy weapons. They have no defensive shields. They're isolated. On one small world, with limited resources, how exactly are they supposed to threaten a galactic civilization? Other voices joined in agreement. The synthetic collective, beings of pure logic and metal, calculated the odds of human success at less than 0.001%. The Psionic Brotherhood found no trace of mental powers among humans. The energy beings dismissed humans as mere organic matter, crude and limited. But Zephyr pressed on, desperation creeping into his mental voice. You think like civilized beings? Humans do not. When the Draconian Empire destroyed the Kelvin resistance, the Kelvins surrendered when their fleet was defeated. When you conquered the Rigel colonies, they negotiated terms when their defenses fell. Humans are different. They will fight with their last breath, their last bullet, their last drop of blood. He gestured, and images appeared in the air above. The assembly. Scenes from human history played out like a nightmare parade. Humans throwing themselves against enemy lines with primitive weapons. Humans continuing to fight even when their cities burned around them. Humans building weapons of mass destruction and threatening to use them on themselves rather than submit to conquest. Look at their wars, Zephyr pleaded. In their most recent global conflict, one nation faced invasion by an enemy with superior numbers and equipment. Instead of surrendering, they prepared to fight in their streets and their homes until every man, woman, child was dead. They called it total war. They meant it literally. The images shifted to show humans in space, their primitive rockets and space stations. They have barely left their world, and already they militarize everything. Their first space stations carry weapons. Their exploration vessels are designed to be converted into warships. They explore the cosmos with one hand extended in friendship, and the other holding a gun. General Thax of the warrior caste spat in disgust. His species valued honor in battle above all else. If they are such great warriors, let them prove it. The strongest species rule the galaxy. It has always been so. If these humans are as dangerous as you claim, they will earn their place through conquest, as we all have. That is exactly what I fear, Zephyr replied. You see strength as something to be respected, even in an enemy. Humans see enemies as problems to be solved permanently. They do not seek to conquer and rule, they seek to eliminate threats completely. In their language, they have a phrase, the only good enemy is a dead enemy. War Prime Krextall stood, his massive form towering over the assembly. The Draconian Empire has existed for 50,000 years. We have conquered worlds when their sons were young. We have crushed rebellions across 1,000 star systems. These humans, with their primitive weapons and single world, cannot possibly threaten us. I propose we evaluate them for subjugation or elimination, as we do with all new species. The vote was called. Species after species voiced their agreement with the Draconians. The humans would be contacted and given a choice. Submit to galactic authority or face the consequences. It was standard procedure. Used countless times before with perfect success. Only the keepers abstained from voting. Floating silently above the assembly as the decision was made, as the great hall emptied and beings returned to their ships, Zephyr remained behind, staring into the darkness between stars in a distant solar system.
Apt tent.
Captain Jake Morrison sat at his monitoring station on Luna Base, watching the peaceful rotation of Earth below. He sipped coffee from a thermal mug and checked routine satellite feeds. Unaware that his species had just been marked for conquest by beings who commanded the power of stars themselves, the universe had tried to warn them. They had chosen not to listen. Now, both humanity and the galaxy would learn the consequences of that choice. The first sign came as a blip on the deep space monitoring arrays. Dr. Sophie Martinez sat in the command center of the Arecibo Observatory, watching her screens with growing confusion. The signals were artificial, no doubt about that, but they came from beyond the edge of the solar system where no human technology existed. "Jake, you need to see this," she called to Captain Jake Morrison, who had been transferred to Earth-based operations just 3 days earlier. He walked over to her station, still adjusting to gravity after months on Luna base. The signals were unlike anything in their databases. They pulsed with mathematical precision, clearly indicating intelligence, but the power levels were enormous. Whatever was sending these transmissions had energy sources that dwarfed human capabilities. "Could be a pulsar we haven't cataloged yet," Jake suggested, though his voice carried doubt. He had seen too many space phenomena to dismiss anything. Easily, Sophie shook her head. "Pattern is too regular, too purposeful." "And Jake, the source is moving. It's getting closer to Earth at a significant fraction of light speed." Within hours, observatories around the world confirmed the readings. 7 massive objects had entered the outer solar system, moving in perfect formation toward Earth. The objects were huge, each one larger than a city, and they were clearly artificial constructions. President Adam Hayes received the briefing in the Situation Room deep beneath the White House. General Chris Bennett, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, stood beside a holographic display showing the approaching objects. The room was packed with the highest-ranking officials from every branch of government and military. "How long until they reach Earth?" President Hayes asked, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the situation. "At their current speed, approximately 6 days," General Bennett replied. "They're decelerating as they approach, which suggests they intend to stop rather than simply pass through our system." Dr. Martinez had been flown to Washington immediately. She stood at the display, pointing to the energy readings. "Mr. President, these ships are beyond our current technology by centuries, maybe millennia. Their power output alone exceeds our entire global energy production by a factor of 10,000. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was about to make first contact with beings who possessed technology that made human civilization look like children playing with sticks. Admiral Lisa Carter, commander of the newly formed Space Defense Command, spoke up. "We have 38 military satellites in orbit, plus the International Space Station and Luna base. It's not much, but it's what we have. Should we consider them hostile?" Before anyone could answer, every communication system on Earth received the same transmission. Simultaneously, television broadcasts cut out, radio stations went silent, and computer networks around the world displayed the same message. The voice that spoke was clearly artificial, translated by some advanced computer system, but the words were unmistakably clear. "Primitive species of the third planet, you have been evaluated by the Draconian Empire and found suitable for subjugation. You will surrender your world and submit to our authority within 72 of your solar rotations. Your technology will be confiscated. Your military forces will be disbanded. Your population will be relocated to serve the needs of the Empire. Failure to comply will result in the complete sterilization of your planet. This is your only warning." Ow. Transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving the world in stunned silence. Then the panic began. In the Situation Room, President Hayes stared at the display where the alien ships continued their approach. How do we respond to something like this? General Bennett was already on his phone, mobilizing every military asset. Available, we fight. It's what humans do. Dr. Martinez was running calculations on her tablet. The energy levels I'm seeing suggest they could deliver on their threat. Those ships could turn Earth into a molten ball of rock if they wanted to. "We make sure they don't want to," Admiral Carter said grimly. "I recommend we attempt communication first, but prepare for the worst possible outcome." The decision was made to send a diplomatic mission. Captain Morrison volunteered to lead it, taking the fastest ship available, a modified research vessel, called the UES Defiance. The ship was hastily equipped with every communication device and recording system NASA could install in 48 hours as the Defiance launched from Earth orbit. Morrison carried with him carefully prepared messages from world leaders, offers of trade and cooperation, and detailed information about human culture and achievements. The hope was that rational beings would see the value in peaceful coexistence. The meeting was arranged in the asteroid belt, neutral ground between Earth and the approaching alien fleet. Morrison brought 2 escort fighters, the most advanced military spacecraft humanity possessed. They looked like toys compared to the massive alien vessels that waited for them. The Draconian Command ship was a nightmare of dark metal and glowing energy conduits. It stretched for miles, bristling with weapons that could be seen even from a distance. Smaller ships surrounded it like a swarm of predators, each one larger than any human vessel. War-Commander Vexstar received the human delegation in a chamber designed to intimidate. The Draconian stood 12 feet tall, covered in armored scales that gleamed like black metal. His eyes burned with contempt as he looked down at the small human figure before him. "You are even more pathetic than our scans indicated," Vexstar growled, his voice a rumble of disdain. "Your ship is constructed of primitive metals. Your weapons are chemical projectiles. Your biology is soft and weak. How did such inferior creatures ever develop space travel?" Morrison stood his ground, though every instinct screamed at him to run. "We come here hoping for peaceful contact between our species. Earth has much to offer in terms of trade, cultural exchange, and scientific cooperation. We believe that all intelligent species can find common ground." Vexstar's laughter was like the sound of grinding stone. "Common ground? You speak of trade with beings who could conquer 1,000 worlds like yours? You offer science to those who have mastered the secrets of space and time. Your arrogance is almost amusing." The Draconian commander gestured to a holographic display showing Earth. "Your world has resources we can use. Your population will provide adequate labor for mining operations. Your location offers strategic value for future expansion. These are the only things of worth your species possesses." Morrison tried again. "Our people will not submit to slavery. We're willing to negotiate terms for cooperation, but we will not surrender our freedom. Perhaps we can find a solution that benefits both our species." "There is no negotiation," Vexstar snarled. "There is only submission or death. You will learn this lesson now." Without warning, the Draconian ships opened fire on Morrison's escort fighters. The human vessels simply vanished, turned to vapor by weapons that tore apart matter. At the molecular level, the Defiance was left defenseless, its hull scarred by near misses that were clearly intended as a demonstration. Morrison watched his fellow humans die in the cold vacuum of space, their sacrifice broadcast live to Earth through every communication channel. His hand shook as he activated the emergency transmission system. "This is Captain Morrison to Earth Command," he said, his voice steady despite the horror he had witnessed. "The aliens have shown their true nature. They murdered our escort pilots without provocation. They demand complete surrender and enslavement. They have given us no choice but to fight." Vexstar watched with satisfaction as the human ship limped away, badly damaged but still intact. The demonstration had served its purpose. Soon, the primitive creatures would realize the futility of resistance and surrender as so many species had before them. But as Morrison's final transmission reached Earth, something unexpected happened. Instead of despair, instead of panic, instead of the rational fear that should have led to surrender, humanity responded with something the Draconians had never encountered before. They got angry in military bases around the world. Soldiers watched the footage of their comrades being murdered in cold blood. In research facilities, scientists began working around the clock to find ways to fight back. In government buildings, leaders who had spent their careers avoiding war now spoke of nothing but victory or death. The alien ultimatum had given humanity 72 hours to surrender. Instead, humanity spent those hours preparing for the fight of their lives. Every factory was converted to military production. Every scientist worked on weapons research. Every citizen prepared to defend their world. The Draconians had made a critical error. They had assumed that primitive meant weak, had confused simple technology with simple minds. They had never encountered a species that viewed impossible odds not as a reason to surrender, but as a challenge to overcome. As the deadline approached, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the hastily retrofitted orbital defense platform New Horizon, watching the alien fleet through telescopes. The enemy ships moved with arrogant confidence, certain that the pathetic humans would submit rather than face annihilation. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The footage played on every screen across the planet. Captain Morrison's escort fighters disappearing in flashes of alien fire. The cold voice of War Commander Vexstar speaking of humans as if they were cattle. Adole! The ultimatum echoing in dozens of languages as the world watched their species being sentenced to slavery. But something remarkable
happened in the hours that followed.
Instead of mass panic, instead of riots in the streets, instead of governments preparing to surrender, humanity did what it had always done when faced with bullies. They rolled up their sleeves and got to work. General Chris Bennett stood in the Pentagon's war room, surrounded by maps, charts, and the constant buzz of activity. Officers from every branch of the military worked around the clock, coordinating the largest mobilization in human history. The deadline was 68 hours away, and every second counted. "What do we have?" Bennett asked Colonel Amy Brooks, who had been tasked with cataloging Earth's military assets. "Every nuclear weapon on the planet is being retrofitted with new delivery systems," Brooks reported. "The Russians are sharing their hypersonic technology. The Chinese are opening their military research files. The Indians, Pakistanis, British, French, and Israelis are all contributing their nuclear arsenals. We're talking about 14,000 warheads total." Bennett nodded grimly. "You're in conventional forces. Every military satellite has been armed with kinetic projectiles. NASA's converting their launch systems into missile platforms. The International Space Station is being evacuated and turned into a weapons platform. We have 47 countries contributing ships, aircraft, and personnel." Dr. Sophie Martinez burst into the room, her hair disheveled from 3 days of nonstop work. "General, we've made a breakthrough. The alien wreckage from Captain Morrison's encounter gave us critical information about their technology." She activated a holographic display showing the molecular structure of draconian hull material. "Their armor is incredibly advanced, but it has a weakness. It's designed to absorb and deflect energy weapons. Plasma, lasers, particle beams, they bounce right off. But kinetic weapons, solid projectiles moving at high speed, can penetrate it." Bennett leaned forward. "How high speed?" "The faster the better. At near light velocities, even a small projectile becomes devastatingly effective. We're talking about converting our particle accelerators into weapons, using magnetic fields to launch projectiles at incredible speeds." Meanwhile, Commander Ryan Foster worked in a converted aircraft hangar, overseeing the construction of humanity's first space fighters designed specifically for combat. The ships were ugly, functional, and built with one purpose in mind: to hurt the enemy as much as possible before being destroyed. "We can't match their technology," Foster explained to his engineering team, "so we'll overwhelm them with numbers and unpredictability. Every ship will be different. Different weapons, different tactics, different flight patterns. Computers won't be able to adapt fast enough." The ships taking shape in the hangar looked like they had been assembled from spare parts because they had been. Commercial engines retrofitted with military guidance systems. Civilian communications equipment modified to jam enemy sensors. Mining equipment converted into kinetic weapons that could fire tungsten rods at tremendous velocity. Across the world, the same scene played out in dozens of countries. Factories that had built cars yesterday were building missile components. Today, computer programmers who had designed video games were creating targeting systems for orbital weapons. Students who had been studying physics were calculating trajectories for weapons that had never existed before. President Hayes addressed the world from the White House. His words broadcast to every corner of the planet. "My fellow human beings, we face a choice that will define our species for all time. We can kneel before those who would enslave us, or we can stand and fight for our freedom. I know what choice we will make because I know what we are. We're the species that crossed oceans in wooden boats. We are the people who split the atom and walked on the moon. We are humanity, and we bow to no one." The speech was interrupted by alerts from deep space monitoring stations. The alien fleet had begun moving again, accelerating toward Earth. The deadline had been moved up. They would arrive in 36 hours instead of 60-8. Admiral Lisa Carter received the news aboard the New Horizon, bristling with weapons that had been installed in record time. "They're trying to catch us unprepared," she told her staff. "They think we'll panic and surrender early. They're about to learn how wrong they are." The orbital defense platform had been transformed into a fortress. Every available weapon system from Earth's major powers had been installed. Missiles sat next to American railguns. Chinese laser systems were integrated with European plasma cannons. The international cooperation was unprecedented. Colonel Brooks supervised the evacuation of major cities, but not in the way the aliens expected. Instead of fleeing to shelters, civilians were being organized into resistance cells. Every neighborhood had become a potential fortress. Every citizen had become a potential soldier. "If they break through our space defenses," Brooks told a gathering of mayors and governors, "they'll find that conquering Earth means fighting for every street, every building, every room. We're not just defending our planet, we're defending our homes." The preparations were not just military. Dr. Martinez led a team of scientists in creating a data archive that would survive even if Earth was destroyed. Every piece of human knowledge, every work of art, every record of their civilization was being transmitted to hidden relay stations throughout the solar system. "If we fall," she explained to her team, "future generations will know that we existed, that we fought, and that we died free. Our story will survive even if we don't." In the final hours before the alien arrival, something extraordinary happened. The petty conflicts that had divided humanity for millennia simply stopped mattering. Republicans and Democrats worked side by side in American factories. Israelis and Palestinians shared technology for the common defense. Russians and Ukrainians coordinated their military responses. Indians and Pakistanis combined their nuclear arsenals. The old hatred seemed meaningless when faced with a threat that saw all humans as equally worthless. They were no longer Americans or Chinese or Europeans. They were all human, and that was enough. Commander Foster led the first squadron of Earth's new fighters in a test flight, their engines leaving trails of fire across the night sky. The ships were crude compared to alien technology, but they flew with a desperation and determination that no computer could calculate. "Remember," Foster told his pilots over the radio, "we're not trying to win a clean victory. We're trying to make them pay such a high price that they'll think twice about coming back. Every alien ship we destroy, every minute we delay them, gives Earth more time to prepare." The countdown continued. 24 hours, 12 hours, 6 hours. The alien fleet appeared on telescopes as points of light against the darkness, growing larger with each passing minute. Soon they would be close enough to launch their assault. But Earth was ready, not ready to surrender, not ready to negotiate, but ready to fight. Every weapon was loaded, every ship was fueled, every soldier was at their post. Humanity had spent their final hours doing what they did best, preparing to fight. Against impossible odds, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of New Horizon, watching the alien fleet approach. Around her, officers from a dozen different countries worked together with perfect coordination. Behind her, the blue marble of Earth hung in space, beautiful and fragile and worth every sacrifice. "All stations, this is Admiral Carter," she announced over the global communications network. "The enemy is approaching. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to beg for mercy. Instead, we're going to show them what happens when you threaten." The human race. The alien fleet came to a stop just beyond the orbit of Mars, their massive ships forming a battle line that stretched across space. For a moment, there was silence. Then the first alien ship began moving toward Earth, and the war for humanity's survival began. War Commander Vextar watched the approaching battle with satisfaction. The primitive humans had made their choice. Now, they would face the consequences of defying the draconian empire. It would be over quickly, and then the real work of enslaving the survivors could begin. He had no idea that he was about to discover why the universe had tried to warn them. The first draconian scout ship entered Earth's defensive perimeter like a shark testing the waters. It was sleek, deadly, and 3 times larger than humanity's biggest warship. Its energy shields shimmered as it moved through the asteroid field. Scanning for human defenses, Commander Ryan Foster watched from his fighter cockpit as the alien vessel approached. His ship, the Reaper, looked like scrap metal compared to the gleaming perfection of draconian engineering. But Foster had learned something important in the past few days. Sometimes, the ugliest dog in the fight was the most dangerous. All fighters. "This is Reaper Leader," Foster spoke into his radio. "Remember the plan. We hit fast, we hit hard, and we make them think twice about coming to our neighborhood." The human fighters were hidden among the asteroids, their engines cold, waiting, like predators in the dark. When the alien scout ship passed the first marker, 47 fighters suddenly came to life. Engines blazing as they converged on the enemy vessel from all directions, the draconian ship reacted instantly, its computer systems calculating threats and responses in microseconds. Energy beams lashed out, destroying 3 human fighters in the first exchange. But the humans did something the computer had not expected. They kept coming. Foster's fighters screamed through space, dodging plasma bolts that could have vaporized a city block. His ship's crude but effective kinetic weapons opened fire, launching tungsten rods at incredible velocity. The projectiles struck the alien shields and bounced off, but they created ripples in the energy field that other fighters could exploit. "Target the shield generators," Foster shouted over the radio. "Concentrate fire on the weak points." The human fighters swarmed the alien ship like angry hornets. They moved in patterns no computer could predict because there was no pattern. Each pilot flew by instinct, desperation, and pure human stubbornness. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they used their ships as missiles. Ramming them into the alien hull at maximum velocity, the draconian scout ship destroyed 26 human fighters, but the remaining vessels managed to overwhelm its defenses. The alien ship exploded in a brilliant flash, its debris spreading across the asteroid field like a metal. Rainbow.War Commander Vexstar watched the destruction from his command ship and felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. The humans had sacrificed dozens of their primitive vessels to destroy a single scout ship. The exchange rate was heavily in draconian favor, but the tactics were completely irrational. "Begin the main assault," Vexstar ordered. "Destroy their orbital defenses and prepare for planetary bombardment." The draconian fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their massive ships cutting through space like daggers of dark metal, their weapons systems charged, ready to sweep aside the pathetic human defenses and claim the planet below. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of New Horizon, watching the alien fleet approach through the tactical display. The orbital defense platform was humanity's last line of defense before the aliens reached Earth itself. Around her, officers from 12 countries worked together, their voices creating a symphony of controlled chaos. "Magnetic railguns charging," reported Lieutenant Chen from the weapons station. "Nuclear missiles armed and ready. Kinetic bombardment systems online." "Sir, we're getting readings from the moon," called out Ensign Parker from communications. "Luna Base is launching everything they have." Through the viewports, Carter could see the flashes of rocket engines as dozens of converted civilian spacecraft lifted off from the lunar surface. Mining ships, cargo haulers, even tourist vessels had been armed with whatever weapons could be mounted on their hulls. They formed a ragged line between the aliens and Earth, ready to buy precious minutes with their lives. The battle began when the lead draconian cruiser entered weapons range. The alien ship was a floating city of destruction, bristling with energy, weapons that could crack continents. Its first salvo destroyed 6 human ships instantly, their hulls vaporizing under the assault. But the human response was unlike anything the Draconians had ever encountered. Instead of retreating, instead of trying to preserve their forces, the human ships charged directly at the alien vessels. Mining ships fitted with nuclear warheads rammed themselves into draconian holes. Cargo haulers launched clouds of metal, debris that clogged alien sensors and weapon systems. New Horizon opened fire with every weapon in its arsenal. Magnetic railguns hurled projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Nuclear missiles streaked through space, their warheads modified with alien technology recovered from the first encounter. Kinetic bombardment systems launched clouds of tungsten pellets that struck alien shields like deadly hail. The aliens returned fire, their plasma beams carving through human ships like hot knives through butter. But for every human vessel they destroyed, two more appeared to take its place. The humans fought with a ferocity that defied logic, using their ships as weapons when their guns ran empty. Dr. Sophie Martinez worked frantically in the command center of the Lunar Research Station, monitoring the battle through a network of sensors. Her breakthrough about alien technology was proving correct. The draconian shields were designed to stop energy weapons, but kinetic projectiles were getting through. The railgun hits are causing cascade failures in their shield matrices. She reported to Admiral Carter over the communication link. Their armor can absorb the impact, but repeated strikes in the same location are creating weak points. Carter immediately relayed this information to all human forces. The scattered, chaotic nature of human tactics suddenly gained focus. Every ship began targeting the same weak points, hammering away at the alien defenses with everything they had on Earth. Colonel Amy Brooks coordinated the defense of major population centers as draconian dropships began penetrating the atmosphere. The alien landing craft were met not by organized military formations, but by millions of armed civilians who had turned their cities into fortresses. In New York, construction workers used heavy machinery to drop buildings on alien transports. In London, scientists had turned the subway system into a network of explosive traps. In Tokyo, students and teachers worked together to build improvised weapons that could punch through alien armor. The Draconians had expected to face human military forces. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire species. Every street corner held a sniper. Every building could explode without warning. Every civilian was a potential soldier armed with weapons that defied all tactical predictions. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had something else. They were fighting for their homes, their families, their very existence. Every human who fell was replaced by 10 more. Every building destroyed became raw material for new weapons. Every defeat became fuel for greater determination. Commander Foster, now flying his third fighter after the first two had been shot down, led a desperate assault on the Draconian command ship. His remaining pilots followed him through a storm of enemy fire, their ships weaving between plasma beams and missile barrages. "This is for Captain Morrison," Foster shouted as his fighters, weapons locked onto the alien command vessel. "This is for every human they murdered. This is for Earth." The human fighters struck the command ship like a wave of metal and fury. Most were destroyed in the approach, but enough survived to deliver their payloads. Nuclear warheads detonated against the alien hull, creating breaches that atmosphere and debris rushed to fill. War Commander Vexstar felt his ship shudder under the human assault. His bridge crew, normally calm and efficient, now worked with desperate urgency to repair damaged systems. The battle was not going according to plan. Status report, Vexstar demanded. 40% shield loss across the fleet, his tactical officer reported. The humans are concentrating fire on damaged sections. Their weapons are primitive, but they are using them effectively. Vexstar stared at the tactical display, watching human ships throw themselves at his forces with suicidal determination. In 5,000 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like it. Species surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. They negotiated when defeat was certain. They preserved their lives above all else. But these humans just kept fighting. Even when their ships were crippled, they used them as battering rams. Even when their weapons were destroyed, they found new ways to hurt the enemy, even when facing certain death. They charged forward with savage glee, for the first time in his long military career. War Commander Vexstar began to understand why the Keepers had tried to warn them. The battle raged on, humanity trading blood. For time, courage, for tactical advantage. The aliens were winning, but they were paying a price they had never expected to pay. And somewhere in the chaos of exploding ships and dying heroes, the tide of war began to shift in ways that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The news traveled through the galaxy faster than light itself. What had started as routine conquest had become something unprecedented. A primitive species was actually fighting back against the mighty Draconian Empire, and they were winning. On the crystal world of Vexor Prime, Elder Keeper Zephin floated in his meditation chamber, watching the battle unfold through his connection to the cosmic web. Around him, other keepers observed in silence as their worst fears came to pass. Humans were doing exactly what they had predicted, turning desperation into weapon, transforming hopeless odds into fuel for greater violence. "The Draconians have lost 30% of their fleet," whispered Keeper Athen, her ethereal form flickering with distress. "The humans continue to fight despite losing 60% of their forces. This defies all logical models of warfare." Zephin turned his ancient eyes toward the distant solar system where the battle raged. Logic has nothing to do with this. The humans are not fighting a war, they are fighting for survival. And a species fighting for survival becomes the most dangerous force in the universe. Far across the galaxy, in the hidden chambers of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions convened as species after species received reports of the ongoing battle. The synthetic collective ran calculations showing that the human victory probability had risen from 0.001% to 12%. The Psionic Brotherhood detected massive waves of emotional energy emanating from the human homeworld, not fear or despair, but rage and determination. Ambassador Veltar of the Cetacean Federation spoke to the emergency assembly, her voice trembling with disbelief. "The humans are using their civilian population as soldiers. Their children are building weapons. Their elderly are manning defensive positions. They have turned their entire species into a military force." General Thax of the warrior caste stood and roared his approval. "Finally, a species worthy of respect. They fight like true warriors, without fear of death or concern for odds. Is how wars should be fought." But other voices were less pleased. The insectoid hive queen, Chelik, clicked her mandibles in distress. "If the humans defeat the Draconians, it will encourage other subject species to rebel. The entire galactic order could collapse." Back in the solar system, the battle had reached its climax. War Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, watching his perfect fleet being torn apart by creatures he had dismissed as primitive insects. Half his ships were destroyed or crippled. His ground forces were trapped in endless urban warfare against an enemy that refused to follow any rules of engagement. "Sir, we're receiving reports from the surface," his communications officer announced, his scaled face pale with shock. "The humans have turned their schools into weapons. Factories. Their hospitals are treating wounded soldiers and sending them back into battle within hours. Their children are serving as messengers and spotters for artillery strikes." Vextor's claws dug into his command chair. In 5,000 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Species surrendered when their military was defeated. They negotiated when their cities were threatened. They preserved their civilian populations above all else. But these humans had no civilians. Everyone was a soldier. Everyone was a weapon. Everyone was willing to die rather than submit. Commander Ryan Foster, now on his 5th fighter after 4 had been destroyed beneath him, led the final human assault on the Draconian command ship. His face was scarred from radiation burns, his flight suit patched with duct tape, but his voice was steady as he spoke to his remaining pilots. "This is it, people. Everything we have left, everything we are, goes into this attack. We make them remember that they should have listened to the warnings about humanity." The human fighters formed a loose formation as they approached the alien flagship. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and flying ships held together with spare parts and determination. But they had one advantage the aliens could never understand. They were fighting for something more important than victory. Admiral Lisa Carter watched from the bridge of New Horizon as Foster's fighters began their final approach. Her orbital platform was a wreck, held together by emergency repairs and the will of her crew. But her weapons were still functional, and she had one last card to play. All stations, prepare for ramming speed. Carter announced to her crew.
We're
going to take that command ship with us? Her officers looked at her with expressions of grim acceptance. They had known this moment would come. The New Horizon was too damaged to survive much longer, but it could still serve as a weapon. Dr. Sophie Martinez worked frantically in the platform's research section, uploading the final data packages to Earth's hidden relay stations. Every detail of the battle, every tactical innovation, every weakness they had discovered in alien technology was being preserved for future generations. If we don't make it, she told her assistant, at least they'll know how to fight these bastards. The final assault began with Foster's fighters diving through the draconian defensive fire like meteors of human rage. They had no shields, no advanced weapons, no sophisticated tactics. They had only the absolute refusal to give up, and sometimes that was enough. Foster's ship took a direct hit from an alien plasma cannon, but he kept flying on engine power alone, his fighter's hull glowing white-hot from the damage. He lined up his final shot on the command ship's bridge and fired everything he had. "Remember us?" Foster whispered, as his fighter exploded in a ball of nuclear fire that tore through the alien hull like tissue paper. The New Horizon followed moments later, Carter's platform ramming into the draconian flagship at full velocity. The collision destroyed both ships in a blast that could be seen from Earth's surface. But it also sent a message that echoed across the galaxy. Humanity would rather die than kneel. War Commander. Vexstar felt his ship dying around him as explosions tore through the hull. In his final moments, he understood what the Keepers had tried to warn them about. Humans were not like other species. They could not be conquered because they would not accept conquest. They could not be enslaved because they would rather die. Free as his flagship broke apart, Vexstar transmitted a final message to the surviving draconian ships. Retreat. Do not return to this system. Do not pursue these creatures. You have awakened something that should have been left alone. The surviving alien ships fled the solar system, carrying with them stories that would spread throughout the galaxy. Mighty draconian empire, conquerors of worlds, had been defeated by a species that barely knew how to travel between planets. On Earth, the surviving humans emerged from their shelters and bunkers to see the alien fleet retreating into the darkness of space. The victory had cost them dearly. Billions were dead. Their cities were in ruins. Their orbital infrastructure was destroyed. But they were still free. President Hayes addressed the world from the ruins of Washington, his words broadcast to the scattered survivors across the planet. We have won something more valuable than victory today. We have won the right to determine our own destiny. The universe tried to warn them about humanity, and now they know why. In the years that followed, human ships began appearing at the edges of known space. They carried a simple message to all who would listen. We come in peace, but we are prepared for war. Treat us with respect, and we will be your friends. Threaten us, or those we protect, and you will learn why the galaxy fears the children of Earth. The Galactic Council reconvened, this time with a human representative, Dr. Sophie Martinez. Now Admiral Martinez of the newly formed Terran Space Command took her seat among beings who had once dismissed her species as primitive. The Keepers nodded in approval, knowing that the universe had learned a valuable lesson about the danger of underestimating those who fight for their freedom. Elder Keeper Zephin spoke to the assembly one final time. Let this be recorded in the histories of all species. The universe cautioned them never to provoke humanity. They ignored the warning. Now they know the price of that mistake. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as the species that would never again allow bullies to threaten the innocent. They had learned that sometimes the best way to ensure peace was to be prepared for war, and they would carry that lesson to every corner of the cosmos. The universe had tried to warn them. Now it knew why the warning had been necessary.